In this video, we are going to take a look at the big changes in the Math 7 and Math 7 Accelerated course as a result of the 2019 course of study. There are three major foundational shifts in terms of the courses. We are wanting students to move from knowing things to applying things. We want them to move from understanding to creating, and there is a heavy focus on application. For example, in moving from understanding to creating, it's not just that students understand an expression, but that they can create an expression. It's not just that they understand an equation, but they can create an equation that matches their scenario. Now let's take a look at the standards that are new to the course. In regular math, standards 10 and 12 are both new. They deal with statistics and bias. Specifically, Part E of Standard 10 asks students to informally explain situations in which statistical bias may exist. This element of bias has not been seen in previous standards. Number 12, asking students to make informal comparative inferences about two populations using measures of center and variability and/or mean absolute deviation in context. Mean absolute deviation has been moved from 6th grade to 7th grade. Accelerated, standards numbers 4 and 7, dealing with proportional relationships. Those come from the grade 8, standards 7 and 10. So students will need to be able to determine if a relationship between two variables is proportional or not proportional, and they will need to be able to compare proportional and non-proportional linear relationships shown in different ways, algebraically, graphically, numerically, or by verbal descriptions, what we commonly refer to as the rule of 4. They're going to be using those to solve real-world problems. So proportional reasoning has those two new standards in Accelerated Math 7. Standards 19 and 20 in Accelerated are also new, coming from the new Algebra 1 with probability standards numbers 12 and 13. So they will need to be able to create equations in two variables to represent relationships between quantities and context. They will need to also be able to graph these equations with labels and scales, make predictions with them. Standard 20 asks them to represent constraints by equations and inequalities and interpret those solutions as both viable and non-viable options in a modeling context. Notice that both of these are going to be limited to context arising from linear functions. So we're not going any further than a linear function. The ARC on constructing and interpreting linear models, Accelerated Standards 22 through 25. Those are all new standards for the Accelerated course. So as you can see on the screen, they will need to be able to talk about ways that changes in f of x are changed by f of x plus k, k times f of x, etc. Again, limiting to linear functions. They will need to be able to construct functions to model linear relationships between variables, interpreting rate of change as slope, explaining why the x-coordinates of the points where the big graphs, where the graphs of the equations intersect, why that's called the solution. So we're getting into systems. And then finding approximate solutions by graphing the functions, making tables, or finding approximations using technology when appropriate. Again, we're still looking only at linear functions, so we're not getting into exponential or quadratic, just focusing on linear functions. There are also some changes in wording. So again, as we referenced before, the introduction of bias in standard number 10, and in number 12, mean absolute deviation has been moved from 6th grade. Standard 13 has been reworded so that students will be representing probability with numbers, not just understanding what probability is. In Standard 14, they will be asked to explain any discrepancies that arise in their problems. Standard 16 gives specific representations of probabilities. So it's going to ask for percents, decimals, and fractional representations of probability. That has not been spelled out before like it is now. And then again, as we said before, students are having to do a lot of explanation and application. Standard 20 asks them to explain their relationships. So in the 22 standards in regular math and the 44 standards in Accelerated Math 7, these are the major changes that we hope that you will implement in